All right, we're live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the virtual book tour of my memoir, Girl Decoded, which was published by Penguin Random House this past April. For those of you tuning in for the first time, I'm Rana el Kaliouby. I'm co-founder and CEO of Affectiva. Every Wednesday at noon, I'm live streaming conversations with other innovators and entrepreneurs to discuss themes in the book. Everything from human-centric AI to innovation, AI ethics, leadership, women in technology, diversity, and the importance of training our next generation of AI leaders. One of my favorite things about doing these live streams is really I'm finding that it's kind of allowing me to build new connections. So hearing from you, the audience, is always really fun. So please let us know, where are you tuning from? And of course, as always, please feel free to post your questions and your comments, and we'll answer them. We'll answer as many of them as we can. A few housekeeping items. As usual, we'll be giving away 2 copies of Girl Decoded to people who are engaging with us today. So if you want to be entered to win, please make sure that you engage in the conversation. And if you want to make sure you don't miss any future live streams, be sure to follow me on LinkedIn and Facebook, and you'll get an automatic notification. I'm based in Boston, as many of you, or just outside of Boston, as many of you know, and a lot of the conversation in our household is like, things are starting to open around us. We're still kind of proceeding with caution. The big question mark is, of course, what's going to happen with schooling in the fall. So we'll see. We're anticipating. I don't think it's going to be back to normal, but there's a whole range of options. So that's kind of the big thing. But I hope everybody is staying safe and staying connected. So for the conversation today, it is my real pleasure to introduce my coworker, my friend, Taniya Mishra, who is Affectiva's Director of AI Research. And we're going to discuss something that is near and dear to both our hearts, Affectiva's summer training and internship program, EMPath. The goal of that program is to train the next generation of AI innovators and thought leaders, keeping in mind diversity and accessibility, but also ensuring that this next generation is going to build technology with ethics in mind. We will be talking about all sorts of things, including how we had to grapple with this in times of this pandemic. We, at some point, decided we weren't going to go ahead with it, and then we had to completely pivot. So I look forward to the conversation. Welcome, Taniya. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you, Rana. It is so fun to be here in your book tour for Girl Decoded. It's such an awesome book. It's touched both my heart and my head. There were things that you have talked about, your past research about DBNs, where I was like, oh, but what has really stood out for me is, your humanity, your wanting to connect with other people, your wanting to lift up other people even while you are raising yourself up. And that was evident from the very beginning of your story. And it is definitely very much a part of our relationship. So everyone, I am so delighted to be here with my boss and my friend, Rana el Kaliouby, amazing author, best boss. So great.
So tell us your story.
Okay.
How did you end up at Affectiva? Let's start from the way back.
Okay. So Rana and I have known each other since I joined Affectiva, first as a lead scientist to build up the speech product for Affectiva, and in a year and a half or so after that, transitioning to being the director of AI research with a mandate to look at all forward-looking research related to affective computing. But my story, of course, goes way back. The other parts of who I am, besides being a technologist and a machine learning researcher, is I'm an Indian girl. Rana is an Egyptian girl, and I'm an Indian girl. I grew up in India until I was just 20 years old, and I grew up with parents like yours, Rana. They were very traditional in their social values, but they were very modern in their outlook.
I believe you have one younger sister, right?
I have one younger sister, yes. And, back then, just like in Egypt and India as well, people they thought that there were limitations to what girls can learn. But my parents didn't believe that. For them, they knew that they would give their kids the best education that money could buy. So this focus on education was primary in my family. And along with it was service to your community. My parents are both physicians, and their first job out of medical school was actually working in a slum in Calcutta, serving really people who have so little and who are often marginalized and overlooked. And so the conversations in my home were repeatedly about how do you serve your community? And they went on to serve communities all over the world, as being part of WHO, as part of being the UN. And so these values, education and community, are so primary to my life, just the way they are to yours. And for those listening, the reason I'm bringing it up is that it actually ties in with what we want to talk next about mentoring. They have been a big part of why I am passionate about mentoring, and why when I met Rana and saw her passion, it just amplified our desire to lift others up while we were raising ourselves up.
Yeah, so I remember when you first joined, I mean, at the time has it been 4 years?
It's been 4 years in September.
September, right. And I remember, at the time we had like a very small summer internship program where we hosted, a small number of students. But I remember giving a talk at one of the kind of schools around here, and this young man, Alex, kept emailing me and saying, "I want to intern with you." And I'm like, I don't know what to do with this guy. And so I'd ignore him, and then he'd email again, and he was like, "I really want to intern with you." So eventually I was like, who can I pass this on to take care, to handle this? And I just felt like you would make something out of it. So I forwarded it to Taniya, and I said, "Okay, Taniya, find a way to either get rid of Alex or," and so Alex ended up being, and he was in high school, right? So he ended up being our first kind of summer intern on the machine learning and our science team. And he really provided the blueprint for how we built this internship program. So do you want to talk us through the history of EMPath? Start with how it all got started, and then where we are today.
Sure. Yeah. So,
by the way, I just want to say we have people from all over, from Lebanon, Cambridge, Zurich, India, UK. So keep engaging with us. If there are any of our trainees here, please say hi to us. I know we have really cool trainees this year. Okay. So Alex.
Yeah, so actually, when I think about the history of EMPath, there are two things that stand out to me. So there's definitely Alex. He was our first high school intern. And, I took him on because I was really struck by his interest, by his ambitions, by his grit. I mean, he had a lot of technical knowledge, given that he was in high school for his level. But even more so, I was just really struck by his drive. But there was another person who kind of came a little bit before Alex. So Alex was our first summer intern who was in high school in 2017. But in the beginning, in the winter of 2017, we had our first virtual intern, and that was a young man named Islam, and he was from Cairo, from the American University of Cairo. And, again, I think I had only been at Affectiva at that point for less than 3 months, but through, connection, someone from the Cairo office, I believe, had forwarded his resume to me. And once again, he was just very eager to engage with Affectiva. And I looked at his resume. He had some technical skills, but he didn't have machine learning skills. He didn't have deep learning skills. And I was just embarking on the process of actually using deep learning for the first time for, within Affectiva. This was one of the first projects where we were transitioning from using traditional ML to using deep architectures, and while also building up the speech product. And so, if I just looked at his resume from just like a technical perspective, did he meet all the checklist? No. But once again, I talked to him, and this kid, he was undaunted, right? He didn't care that we were thousands of miles apart. He didn't care that, there were so many things to learn. And I was like, all right, let's do it. I also had a need. So, it wasn't just me, helping him out. It was him helping me out. Right. I thought that if I could teach him what I knew, he would be an extension of, my arms. In a sense, I have, multiplying how many people are working on this problem. And so we worked together for about 11 or 12 weeks, and it was amazing. His work contributed to what eventually became, Affectiva's speech product. We generated intellectual property. We wrote technical papers. I mean, this was all within 12 weeks, starting from where, the student had very little machine learning experience. And those two things, the fact that we could do this virtually, and a few months later that we could do it with students as young as in high school, I was like, this is my aha moment. This is my light bulb moment, right? And the rest is kind of been an awesome, amazing journey for all of us at Affectiva. What started with 1 or 2 students, today it is 52 students between the ages of 16 and 22. We have, of course, 20 amazing graduate mentors, and actually 1 or 2 who are undergrads supporting them, and 20 full-time Affectiva R&D researchers and engineers also serving as mentors. So, what started with, 1 researcher mentor me and 1 student on the other end of the world has now blossomed to almost 100-strong team, including you, Rana, and so many other people at Affectiva supporting this endeavor. So.
That's great. I can see one of our mentors, Sema, is on. Hi, Sema. That's great to have you on. Sema's actually based in Berlin, I think. And we got connected just through these book tours, and I had a call with her, and she was like, I love what you guys are doing. And we were able to bring her in as an amazing mentor to, engage with our trainees. What I found really interesting is last year we had about 12 interns in person, right? And summer interns. And this year we said, okay, we're going to expand this program to 15. And I believe we got 600 applications. It was insane. 606. Yeah, it was just insane. Yeah. And then, of course, COVID happened, and we knew that we weren't going to be able to do this in person. We also, for a whole variety of reasons, including budgeting reasons, we just didn't think that it was viable to do it in its in its usual format, and so we canceled it. And I think we must have sat on it for a couple of weeks, heartbroken.
Very heartbroken.
and then we were able to pivot to this virtual experience. So tell us more about how the program is taking shape today.
Yeah, so the program today, EMPath 2020, is a 5-week fully virtual program, and as I said, involving 52 students between the ages of 16 and 22, 20 external mentors, most of whom are in graduate school, a couple in undergrad, and then about 20 Affectiva research and engineering staff members who are serving as mentors. And this program is kind of structured into 2 phases. And the first phase was a learning phase where we created a whole host of playlists or learning resources, which were designed to teach somebody about machine learning, affective computing, data analysis and visualization, responsive web design, all the different components that come together to stand up a product. So we created all these different playlists, and the students are given these playlists through a wonderful platform called Localized. It's a platform that allows us to have a closed community of learners and mentors who can all engage with each other. We can jump on a Zoom call if we need to. We can send each other messages asynchronously. It's just this wonderful platform. It was started by Rana and one of your friends, Rana. And again, this is the network effect, right? Like we got connected through you. And it's been an amazing platform. But we host all of our learning materials on this platform. And, I have created schedules that students can follow. But what is interesting about those schedules, and something that I'm rather proud of, is that because it's virtual, and students don't just learn by throwing material at them, they learn when people come alongside them. So we have built into the schedule every single day 2 to 3 touch points that students are connecting with someone else. It's an Affectiva mentor, it's a graduate mentor, it's me, it's speakers that are coming to speak directly to them. They're connecting with them and getting encouraged, learning technical skills, and basically they are seeing someone who's a few steps ahead of them in the process. And I think that this sort of high touch, human to human interaction, this mentoring, which is so relational, is to me one of the cornerstones of this program. That is what makes this program as successful it is. That is why I have felt that we can take high schoolers, some who have less than 1 year of coding experience. And actually this year, 20% of our cohort has 0 to 1 year of coding experience. That we can take students like that, and by the end of their engagement with us, they have built something that they can value, that we love, and they have learned new skills. So this was sort of the first phase, was the learning phase. And today starts the very exciting phase. It's the challenge phase, which we have instantiated as a make-a-thon. In fact, at 11 a.m. Eastern today, they were given their make-a-thon prompts, and they are all little teams of 4 with a dedicated mentor who's an expert at machine learning, and then floating mentors who are experts in design thinking, in entrepreneurship. Mom is one of them, and they have all the support. And now, for the next 2 weeks, they are going to stand up a product based on one of the prompts that they select today, all of them related to applications of affective computing to make our engagements with and through computers, smartphones easier and more empathetic.
Yeah, and the prompts cross industry, everything from automotive to telemedicine. We have some ideas around Internet of Things enabled, like emotion-enabled devices. So video conferencing, right? Like what's the next generation of a virtual shared experience look like? So I'm like super curious to see what these, what our teams come up with. So before we go into the topic of mentoring, because I know for both of us, it played a really key role in where we are today. I remember when we were, designing this program, that was, during all the protests that were happening in the United States. And it was this moment of reckoning around all of the systemic racial and social injustices that exist in this country, but also around the world. And we really, as a team, I remember we had a all hands on deck team meeting, and we decided that we always prioritize diversity and inclusion. It's part of who we are as a company, but we wanted to make sure that this training program is accessible to not just our usual suspects, kids who come from computer science programs or kids who go to the top private schools in the area. We wanted to make sure that we reach out and bring in kids who may not have heard about us or may not have this opportunity. So talk us through where we ended in terms of diversity, because I love the diversity of the program, but also it was very purposeful, right? It didn't just accidentally happen. We took very clear steps to make sure that we ended up with this cohort. So share some of our findings.
Yeah, so I think one of the first things that we did about this, to bring about this diversity, is we took away any technical requirement to be part of the program. I mean, my personal belief is this is a training program at the end of the day. So current knowledge is in some ways less important than your vision for where you want to go. It's like taking a trip. Step one is knowing, hey, I want to take a trip to Paris, which I actually do. But then it's working backwards from there and figuring out, okay, what are all the things I need to do in order to reach my dream destination, in order to reach my goal? So that was one of the first things we did. We actually, unlike many other training programs as well, we just took away the, technical requirements. We still had certain requirements, but that requirement was drive. You had to convince us why you wanted to be in this program, because like our internship program, I mean, we had so many applicants for this program. So that was step one. Step two was actually through engaging the broader community. Mm-hmm. Many of our students have come to us through other organizations that are similarly focused on building up the next generation of leaders, like the Bezos Foundation, mm-hmm. Fellowship in New York, Year Up.
Year Up.
A few. I'm probably missing a few of them, but basically I reached out to all organizations that are focused on education, that are focused on diversity and inclusion, and I requested them to come alongside us and send us students to this program. So now we've ended up with this cohort that is more than 50% female. 25% of our students are actually based outside of the United States. We have a number of them that are, of course, in Egypt, but we also have students that are in India and students that are in Canada. We have students that are about 50% of them are in high school and 50% of them are in college. So anywhere between, rising juniors in high school all the way to someone who's about to finish their undergrad. So it's kind of nicely divided between that. And of course, and I'm just so proud of this, that we have been able to do this, that 20% of our students have 0 to 1 year of coding experience, and they are taking this audacious step with us, saying, yes, teach me, I'm willing to learn. And so I think that this, and of course, when you look at these students, when we have our meetings, I mean, they represent so much diversity, so many different cultures. Right. Each of them has these fantastic stories. We have a student who is from Cameroon, and she has gone through some really challenging times there. And her story, how it shapes what she's going to do for the Makeathon, I'm excited for it. We have students who have a double major in piano and computer science.
Right.
I want to see how they bring that in, right? We have students, of course, that have, are in the degree process of getting a degree in psychology or, mental health. But they are like, hey, I think that AI can help me serve my community better. So teach me about it. So it's such a rich tapestry of just diverse experiences and stories.
Yeah, I think one we often get asked, like, why do this, summer training program or summer internship program? Because obviously it does take a lot of time and effort and mind share of our team, and especially you, Taniya. But also, like at least 20 people on the Affectiva team are pulled in and are involved in this. I can think of at least 3 reasons why I think this is important. But one that is top of mind is the diversity angle. Like, as we design the future of technology and ensuring that it's ethical and human-centric, diversity isn't just gender or ethnicity or backgrounds of experiences. It's age too. And I feel very strongly that our youth need to be involved in the design of the future of tech. And the sooner we can bring them into this dialogue, the better the outcome will be. So these young people definitely bring different perspectives. They're very, very thoughtful, very, very concerned about social justice and how we think about all of these technologies. So we're learning as much from them as they are learning from us. And I think this is really powerful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this has been my experience the last 4 years, and actually all of my mentoring experience 6 years before that. Every summer, I actually really look forward to it because I learned so much from my students. My goal for each one of my trainees is that I'm going to get you started, but by the end of our engagement, you actually know more about that topic than I do, where you are telling me like, hey, I read this paper, we should try this technique, or no, it's not that way, it's this way. It makes me so happy to see that. But more, it's even more than that. It's more than technical skills. They ask such amazing questions. They ask us, why are we building this? Why are we not building it this way, right? It gives us all, those of us that are sort of, in the mindset, in the field, we get used to doing things a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody comes and asks with a great deal of openness, like why, and why not this way versus that way, it gives us all pause. And I think consequently, it makes us more thoughtful about the work that we are doing. And I think it helps us build better technology.
Absolutely. We've also, and this is kind of obvious, but it creates an amazing pipeline of talent for us. So when, a lot of our interns have ended up joining Affectiva full time when the time is, when they graduate from wherever they are. So that's been wonderful too. Okay, so we have a whole bunch of questions. I'm going to tackle some of them. Barry from Florida. Hi, Barry. Question. When training AI to embrace the highest ethical standards, how do you triage the world's ethical traditions, many of which have engendered wars and conflicts? New technologies create ethical dilemmas. So how do we address that? Yeah, that's a great question. We talk about the ethical development and the ethical deployment of AI, including emotion AI like ours. With the ethical development, in my opinion, the biggest consideration is ensuring that the data and the algorithms are not biased. And so that is a top of mind conversation and priority for us as a company. And it's definitely kind of a conversation that we expose our trainees to within the program. With the ethical deployment, we talk a lot about data privacy, consenting, opt-in and consent, which is part of our ethos. Everything we've done so far is on an opt-in and consent basis. And again, we that means that there are some industries that we don't entertain. And for example, security and surveillance or lie detection are not something we at Affectiva focus on. And in fact, we advocate for the ecosystem of other partners or even competitors that this is not an area where we think it is not the right area to focus this technology on. So you will see that manifest in our Makeathon prompts, right? Like we're very focused on applications where we believe the technology can have true potential for good, whether it be making our roads safer by partnering with automotive companies to detect driver distraction or drowsiness, or incorporating our technology into telehealth platforms to make sure that to ensure that we maximize patient outcomes, especially in this very virtual universe. So we're very mindful about how this technology can help people. And again, I know we're going to see amazing ideas come out of this cohort in terms of the applications. Andy, that you'll find this funny, Taniya. Andy says, great subject. How are you automating the mentoring program? I feel it's getting large enough where this may be needed. But it's a great question. Like, Taniya, have you thought about scale? How can we scale this?
I have had to think about scale because we grew it to, 3x'd it in between last year and this year, and then also made it entirely virtual. So, I think that, starting to this year, we kind of created all of this, training material. I don't expect that next year we will be, creating a lot of that.
Right.
We are we are hosting it on a particular platform. We have
right. So we didn't have to reinvent the wheel there, right?
We didn't have to reinvent the wheel there. I can certainly imagine that we can, but I have spent a lot of time matching mentors to mentees, right? I do that personally based on not just the skills the mentor has and the skills the mentee needs, but also about personality. Because I really believe in that one-on-one relational mentoring, that chemistry, that connection, because that's what propels a young person forward. And I've spent an enormous amount of time on it. I've thought about, I wonder if there is a way to automate that. We could be using some affective computing approaches. What if we are having people talk up rather than they send me these long emails, right? Rather than writing it all up, what if they made a short video snippet and somehow, at least as a first pass, we could see if there is this idea of what we call entrainment. When two people are on the same wavelength, their voice, the melody and rhythm of their voice actually over time starts to become really similar.
If you build this AI matching algorithm, can we also then apply it to dating apps?
Oh yeah.
I say it cheekily, but I actually think it's interesting, right?
I think that there is a lot of potential for that. There's a lot of good and interesting work that is being done, kind of looking at the interpersonal connection. So I've certainly spent a little bit of time thinking about that. But I think the part that I don't want to lose, even with the automation, is that human connection, is those, actual, touch points where you're connecting with another person and really having a conversation and sharing laughs and figuring things out together.
Great. All right, we have a question/comment from Steve. Hi, Steve. Great to see you again. Steve wants to be, so Steve is the founder and CMO of I Hope. They want to be a test bed for pilot studies that use Affectiva's technologies to support psychotherapist-delivered teletherapy. That's super interesting. We have hundreds of patients in online cognitive-based training treatment with thousands of sessions completed, many sessions recorded or capable of recording with informed consent. Okay, we should totally talk because one of our prompts is teletherapy, telemedicine related. And if we have access to data, that could be really powerful for the students because they don't have to spend time thinking about how to get access to the data. So Taniya, can Steve email you?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, we will make sure we connect you both, Steve. But that's wonderful. Great. Let's see if we have, okay, one more question. I am a / request from Carlos. Hi, Carlos. I'm currently mentoring the development of a fantastic platform, which is a very strong human emotion detection data collection component to then learn from users' behavior and provide recommendations for developing their soft skills. Okay, would love to have a one-on-one chat. That is actually really interesting because especially again, as we continue to do a lot of, our daily business and our human connections and our learning all happening online, I do think there's an opportunity to quantify these connections. I mean, we've talked about building an empathy detector or an empathy classifier. Like, how can we build a classifier that captures empathy or entrainment or loyalty or trust? So I know this is something that we are very interested in thinking about. Yeah. Do you have thoughts on that, Taniya? I know we've kind of talked about that in the past.
I mean, I think that this is, Rana, you've talked about it in your book that, Simon Baron-Cohen, he had this taxonomy of 412 different emotional words that are used to describe emotions that they then narrowed down to 24. And then you ended up selecting initially, a small subset. And while we've narrowed it down, and these are all synonyms, certain words are synonyms of each other, yet the reason we have all these different words is because they are actually very nuanced. They are nuanced. They are different in some ways. And so you said, capturing loyalty, and I use the word chemistry.
Right. What is that? How do you quantify that?
But quantifying that is very much a open question that is being worked on at many different universities, that we are certainly thinking about, especially as we are moving into the area where humans and machines will have an even closer connection. Rana, you've talked about trust. How do you capture that trust between those two people? But the beginning of it is really collaboration across organizations. You earlier talked about, related to the question about, ethics and fairness in AI. A big part of actually having more fair AI is having open conversations, having forums like this, where people hear your thoughts, my thoughts, your other guests' thoughts, and write back. They engage with us. And I think that that's one area that I would say, I might be biased, but I think Affectiva has led the pack among tech startups, especially. Because within tech startups, there's a lot to do. You are constantly struggling between changing the world with your vision and keeping the lights on, and things like big thoughts, like big ideas, like fairness, ethics. Sometimes people think, and I understand why they think that, let's think about it later. Let's get this product out the door. But what I love about Affectiva, and that has come through your leadership and your vision, is that we don't think about it later. We think about it alongside, making our product deliveries. We say, how can we, keep engaging other people? How can we keep moving forward, even if baby steps, on these hard questions around fairness in AI, around ethical development of AI, or capturing these very nuanced emotional displays and connections. We keep moving it forward while also meeting our, product deadlines. So I think conversations, connections are a big way.
Yeah, that's you reminded me. I should mention, if anybody is interested in learning more, we are members of the Partnership on AI Consortium, which was started by all the tech giants a number of years ago, as well as ACLU and Amnesty International. And they have since invited a number of startups, so we're one of them. And we, in fact, just wrapped up a year-long project initiative that really took a deep dive into affective computing and emotion AI. And we worked very closely with, the PAI community, but also a lot of other, it's a multi-stakeholder group. And we had to think through all of the amazing potential of this technology, but also think really hard about the unintended consequences. And we literally just wrapped up this project, and, there's a white paper coming out of that. But, it is hard for a startup to make time and space to engage in these conversations, because you're often under a lot of time pressure and funding pressure to focus on product deliveries, which is, of course, critical. But I do feel strongly that as leaders in this space, it is important that we are part of the conversations and shape where it goes. Gamila, I loved your comment. Thank you for sharing. It's common for people to be generous with their money, but it's atypical to be generous with your time and knowledge. Thank you for providing such a sublime platform. Thank you. We'd love to find ways to involve you as well. I know you just finished reading the book, so thank you for sharing your thoughts about that too. So I want to switch to mentoring. You've already brought it up a few times. It's certainly played such an important role in my career. I've been just so fortunate and lucky to be surrounded by people who believed in me and mentored me and were and are my role models. One in particular is Professor Rosalind Picard, who I met way back in 2005. I had read her book, followed her research, and then had the opportunity to meet her in person. And she invited me to join her lab at MIT. And she really became my mentor and my role model. I looked up to a lot of her approach to doing research, but I also looked up to her as a mom and as a partner and a leader. And she taught me a lot of things. I think the biggest thing she taught me is persist. and persistence and never take no as an answer. I remember the first time we applied for a grant to the National Science Foundation. We got turned down. That was before I started MIT. So the funding was supposed to bring me over to Boston. And I thought, that's the end of it. My dream to come to MIT is dead. And she called me in Cairo. And I thought, she was going to say, sorry, we tried. And she was like, okay, they turned down the project, but they loved the idea. So let's build it and then reapply for a bigger fund. And so, that was the beginning of our kind of partnership. She's also the co-founder of Affectiva. So the role of mentors is really, really key. And Taniya, I don't know if you want to share your story with mentoring as well. And anybody who's tuned in, do share your stories about how mentors have played an important role in your life. Love to hear from you.
Yeah. So, my mentors have changed my life. I would not be here talking to you, getting an opportunity to engage with this amazing audience that you have, following that you've built up without the mentors in my life. So Rana, in many ways, our lives are similar. The stories in your book, they remind me of my own. But one way in which we were different is that I had no exposure to computers or computing for the first 20 years of my life. I had never seen a computer until I came to the United States to go to college. And the first time I met a computer was actually like the week before I started college. I went with my aunt. She was an engineer at GE. So she said, okay, come along with me. And she set me up on a terminal, right? And I met Netscape back then. And I opened up 50 windows because I suddenly, it was intuitive. I would open it up, I would type something and I would get information. I was like, this is amazing. What? Mm-hmm. I can get all this information without going to, a library or seeking out all this different people to get me this. I was that new to it that I didn't know that you could X out of a tab. So I just kept opening up, 50 of them, because they would disappear after a while. I was hooked, right? And then I went to college and I was given an advisor to help me pick out a major. And she happened to be the head of the computer science department. She had spent her life before coming to my university, St. Mary's University of Minnesota, as an engineer at IBM. She said, I was looking through all these different majors, and I was kind of overwhelmed. And she said to me, have you considered computer science? And at that point, she might have known me for about 2 months or so. And I looked at her like, is this question for me? Like, I can barely type. I'm just learning how to type. How do you think I can do computer science? But she had seen, I would always talk about the things we could do with computers. And so she said, have you considered computer science? And she really, as I said before, came alongside me. So I, took the first CS course and the next CS course. But I would say at that time, compared to everyone else in my university, I probably knew less about computing and computers because I had never experienced it, right? And not only did I do fine in my computer science courses, but within 9 months, I was actually interning at the Mayo Clinic in their IT department, having this amazing opportunity of building technology that affected people's health and well-being, their finances, affected their lives. And that was a turning point for me. I knew suddenly how to take the skills of my mind and marry it with the passions of my heart. I suddenly was able to see how I can serve my community and find the way in which I could do it. My parents did it through medicine and I was doing it through computing. But
what is I think it's so important this matching with the right mentor is so important. So, as some of our audience are thinking about, their mentors in their own lives and also their mentees, right? Mm-hmm. So question number one is, what do you look for in a mentor? And then what do you look for in a mentee?
What what have I looked for in a mentor is, someone who cares about me, all of me.
I think that's so true.
I mean, it's like, it's not that they have an agenda to check. And I'm very attuned to, like small things. Like if it is like, I want to feel like I can be open with them. I can tell them, I can say, I don't know. I have a 4-year-old and who has autism, so he has to be taught everything. And we were trying to teach him how to ask questions. What I learned from the experts is that you cannot learn how to ask questions if you don't know how to say, I don't know. So right. I wanted somebody who made me feel comfortable in saying, I don't know, and following it up with, how do I, right? So I would say for me, that was important. Someone who made me feel like I could trust them with not knowing.
Yeah, for me, it was finding somebody that I could resonate with, right? Like somebody where I could see there may be like a few steps ahead and I could see myself eventually get there. So that was important for me. And also, to your point, somebody where I could be like totally brutally, like they can be brutally honest with me and call me out on things, and vice versa. Somebody who I could ask, just kind of be able to articulate my fears in a very open way and get like, get tough love, right? Somebody who's a cheerleader, but is also going to call you out when you're maybe not on the right path.
Absolutely. And the other thing I want to point out about mentors is that, we always think of mentors as somebody who's older than you. They don't actually have to be older than you. They can be, the same age. They can be younger than you. I think that, Rana, you have been a friend, but you're also a mentor. You have, we both started out as scientists, but your path has gone towards entrepreneurship, towards business, whereas mine has largely, until very recently, been in the realm of scientific discovery. And, when I talk to you about business, there are so many things that I ask you about, like, oh, what is this? What's a cap table? How do you pitch to investors? You have taught me things, but more than that, you have given me the faith that I can learn this, I can do this. So I think that mentors can be people who are in the same stream as you, who are coming alongside you. They don't have to be ahead of you, because even people who are sort of your peers, they have different skills and interests. So they might be ahead of you in some dimension.
Very cool. Sam, I saw a note there. I truly believe I found the next mentor in my life, and that's Rana. Back at you. I know we're speaking later this week, so we're going to co-mentor here. What about a mentee? I'm sure you get a lot of requests to be somebody's mentor.
I think what I look for in a mentee is really drive and grit. I will take a chance on anybody's grit. I do not care what your current knowledge is. I don't even care if you are in AI or not. I take a chance on grit, because that's what somebody else took a chance on me with, right? Grit, ambition, drive. That's what I'm looking for. And then be willing to do the work, because I will come alongside you. I will jump into the trenches. I will, debug your code. I will help you, but you have to take the first step, right? You have to be willing to do the work. So
I love it. Take a chance on grit. I love it. I think that's an amazing place to end our conversation today. Thank you, Taniya. It was wonderful having you. And thank you, everybody who engaged with us. We have our book winners, Mikey Taylor. Hi, Mikey. And Barry, I'm going to try Chudakov. Congratulations. If you do read the book, please share what resonated with you. And thank you again, everybody, for joining.
It's an awesome book. Everyone should read it.
I didn't tell her to say that, by the way.
No, she did not. It is an awesome, awesome book. I have been inspired in so many ways reading Girl Decoded, and I am so honored to be on your book tour with you, Rana.
Thank you, Taniya. Same here. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining.